The Max Planck Society, one of Germany's most prestigious research organizations and a top destination for ambitious scientists from all over the world. And it's successful, 31 Nobel Prizes since its inception more than a century ago. But there is a dark side.
I was really scared of my supervisor.
He was hitting his table while he was doing that.
I don't want to accept that people are treated like this.
Together with German news magazine Der Spiegel, we travel across Germany and to South Korea to investigate abusive behavior and toxic work environments inside Max Planck Society's renowned research institutions.
At the time, it was miserable. Absolutely miserable. I was like those dogs that you catch in the street that are kind of like trembling.
Gabriel Lando is a theoretical computational physicist from Brazil. He dreamt about conducting groundbreaking research in Germany. Instead, he was pushed to his limits and has been fighting to lift himself back up ever since.
It took me more than a year to heal from it, to stop dreaming about it.
This is where it happened, the Max Planck Institute for the Physics of Complex Systems in Dresden. Gabriel arrived here as a postdoc researcher in 2020 under Jan Michael Rost, its director of finite systems, a renowned scientist. When he was told that the director had another side to him, he didn't give it a second thought.
I didn't have a lot of experience. I was 28 or 29. Like, let's please the guy, because, I mean, he's the director, he's your boss.
We spoke to 20 people from the Institute. Most say they had experienced, witnessed, or were aware of misconduct by the director. Their accounts, when pieced together, portray a systemic form of power abuse. They came from Asia, the Americas, the Middle East, and Europe, drawn by the promise of world-class research, but what they say they experienced made the majority of them drop out of academia. For months, DW's investigative unit, together with German news magazine Der Spiegel, has investigated abusive behavior at several Max Planck institutes. Our findings suggest a systemic failure of accountability. Today, Gabriel lives in South Korea, where he pursues his research. He's one of the few still in academia.
I think I loved nature since I was a child, and once I found out that in order to understand nature and to study nature, I needed to study science.
Gabriel had met the director at a conference and had been thrilled by the offer to pursue his research in Germany. But when he arrived there, he found the director's charm had faded. He vividly remembers an episode.
It was kind of dark. It was 7:30 maybe, or 7. It was pretty late. I went to his office to try to just give him a heads up about the paper. And then he started just like endless. He's saying like, you arrived here almost a year ago. You have done, can I say the words that he said? You have done shit. Like you're not working at all. Like you're useless. And he was hitting his table while he was doing that, and yelling at me at the point that I could see him like spitting. So he was very mad.
Others described similar experiences. They noted that the director's erratic behavior only occurred when they were alone with him.
Despite all the problems, when he told me that the idea was good, I was very happy and I was very motivated. I would go back to work and I would work intensely. And that is the problem, because the next meeting, when I came off all of the ideas that would result from that motivation, he would absolutely crush me. And I was, this is the worst thing, and I remember this coming from a student. Can I stop a bit? Am I sitting right? Can I continue from where I stopped, or yeah?
Go for it.
So, when I talked about the problems that I was having with other people, a student told me that the worst part was not that the meetings were good or bad. The worst part is the unpredictability of it.
Many described how young researchers were at his mercy, especially those from abroad.
He had leverage over those of us from outside Europe. We needed the contract for a residency. He was abusing his power, threatening people not to extend their contract.
You'd have this disgusting, horrible meeting, and he'd be shouting, and you'd just feel your self-worth being degraded away.
Several others say they fell into severe depression, requiring medical attention. They asked not to be named.
The worst thing is hope, because every time that you went back hopeful, he would crush you.
Confronted with Gabriel's case, the Max Planck Society said, quote, "Mr. Rost cannot confirm that he made the statements," unquote. They refused to comment on anonymous allegations. But the issues at this institute aren't unique. We interviewed more than 30 scientists from Max Planck Institutes across Germany who described abusive behavior and toxic work environments. The vast majority were afraid to report the misconduct, fearing the consequences. In Dresden, we meet with Daniel Leising, a professor of psychology who chairs a commission against abuse of power and scientific misconduct at the German Psychological Society.
I'm not saying all scientists are corrupt, but I do say that some scientists are corrupt, some scientists are abusers, perpetrators, and criminals. And it is necessary to openly talk about that, because otherwise the problem is never going to go away.
He has come into contact with dozens of cases of abusive behavior perpetrated by scientists in Germany, including at Max Planck Institutes.
I think the feeling of being helpless and of being at the mercy of someone else who is often not very well intended, who is often actually quite sadistic or exploitative, that in itself is a horrible experience. If you have that for not once, but maybe weeks, months, or even years.
For young scientists, speaking about their experiences is difficult.
If the abuse was sufficiently severe, it's gonna harm you, it's gonna damage you, and it's going to take years for you probably to recover.
Officially, the Max Planck Society has a no-bullying policy, defining it as repeated, persistent negative actions which create a hostile working atmosphere. In a male-dominated field, women face additional struggles. We traveled to an undisclosed location in Germany to speak to a former doctoral researcher about her experience at a Max Planck Institute in Eastern Germany. Aubrey arrived in Germany full of hope, only to have it quickly shattered.
I still feel the stress in my body when I think about what happened.
Like others we've spoken to, she requests anonymity for fear of reprisal. As a woman, she felt belittled and undermined. She describes how male scientists received credit for research by women.
I would be excluded from discussions about my project. Sometimes others would claim my work for theirs, and I just found this overstating of your own contributions and minimizing the contributions of others was just common practice, and that was how people survived.
Results would at times be discussed solely between men.
There were project meetings where no women were invited to attend, and just because this was so common and so typical that it became normal for us.
We corroborated her story and found similar cases of discrimination at other Max Planck Institutes we investigated. For Aubrey, working in this environment eventually took its toll.
I would have panic attacks before meeting my supervisor.
The Institute declined to comment on individual cases without further details, adding that management has not received any report regarding sexist behavior perpetrated by a director or group leader in the past 5 years. Discrimination based on gender or ethnicity is forbidden by the Max Planck Society in its codes of conduct. It could even be grounds for dismissal. So why do directors accused of misconduct remain unscathed? Why do they have so much power? Part of the answer goes back more than a century. In 1911, a German theologian by the name of Adolf von Harnack led the precursor to the Max Planck Society under a radical principle. Science is best advanced through an institute built around a single gifted scientist. Such power should allow them to pursue science without restraint. And it has been successful, 31 Nobel Prize winners. Today, that principle is at the heart of the Max Planck Society, an umbrella organization with 84 institutes. And a budget of more than 2 billion euros in public financing annually. Its legacy continues to resonate. Angela Merkel, the former Chancellor of Germany, herself a trained physicist.
It is precisely this principle, based on excellence and trust, that has made the Max Planck Society one of the world's most renowned scientific organizations. In that, we have a lot to be thankful for the fact that Germany is very attractive for many top international scientists.
This principle appears to be untouchable, even for those at the top. We meet a professor of psychology and neuroscience and a Max Planck director, David Pöppel.
And I don't know if that's timely anymore. I mean, are we building a society that's good for the 10 people who win a Nobel Prize, or the 24,990 people who work there?
In 2021, he became the managing director of a privately funded institute under the Max Planck Society and says he found an underlying atmosphere of sexism. But when he instituted a workshop on sexual harassment, he met resistance.
My new name after instituting this workshop was the Woke Scheiß Director. That is me.
The topic of sexual harassment would eventually resurface. In October 2024, German news outlets reported widespread sexual harassment perpetrated by the 2 other directors at the institute. Pöppel ordered investigations into the allegations, and they were deemed credible. But his efforts were blocked. He eventually announced he would step down from his position, saying on X he was relieved to leave the handful of people whose behavior does not meet minimal standards of morality. Although he is now a director of a different Max Planck Institute, he's weighing his options for the future.
We're living in a time and an environment where there are certain shared values that are non-negotiable. And that includes sexist behavior, mobbing, harassment of any kind. It just cannot be tolerated. Therefore,
officially, the Max Planck Society has several reporting mechanisms, including an external law firm. Gabriel reached out to them. When he requested anonymity, he was told that his request would be treated confidentially.
But to be honest, at one point, persons involved in the conflict have to be named in one way or another to enable investigations.
In an undisclosed location in Germany, we meet with someone who had a similar experience. Felix, a former PhD researcher at a Max Planck Institute in southern Germany, has asked for anonymity for fear of reprisal.
After the experiences I made there, I'm now no longer working in academia.
2 years into his PhD, Felix says he experienced bullying and was given an ultimatum by his group leader: either leave or have your contract expire. He felt pushed out and left. He tried to report his experience through several means, including the law firm. But that led nowhere.
I wrote about specific meetings I had and examples of how we were treated and examples of how we were also sometimes forced to lie towards the administration or towards other scientists, and also examples of scientific misconduct. I wrote it down. It was in the end a document with 40 pages.
We reviewed the document, a detailed report containing screenshots, names, emails, and detailed accounts of misconduct.
The law firm started basically a discussion of the definition of what is even bullying and isn't this just a unfortunate situation.
Felix confronted them with the definition of bullying on the Max Planck Society's website, which included examples such as insulting remarks are made about the employee, their views, or their private life, as well as indications or signals from others that an employee should resign. Afterward, the website changed and the list was taken down. We reviewed independently archived versions and corroborated his story. The lawyers eventually stopped replying to Felix's emails.
I felt there is zero interest of actually doing any investigation work.
Referring to German legal practice, the Max Planck Society emphasizes not every conflict or disagreement between colleagues or superiors and employees corresponds to the definition of bullying. The Max Planck Society has been aware of the problem since at least 2019, when a survey across its 84 institutes found that nearly 1 in 5 respondents had experienced bullying at their respective institute. The Max Planck Society told us that a series of measures emerged from this survey, including mandatory trainings for senior scientists and the establishment of a central staff unit for internal investigations. Felix decided to contact these investigators in 2022 and send them his report. They eventually said they would need to either forward the original report to his institute or receive a revised version, which he feared would reveal sensitive details of victims and witnesses. However, when Felix urged the staff unit not to forward the report, they told him the investigation would then be closed as a result.
I was shocked that they would just use such a trick. Honestly, I feel tricked.
The Max Planck Society said that internal rules require the allegations to be treated at the respective institutes, adding, there was never any intention or desire to forward the complaint without knowledge or consent of the plaintiff. Felix would eventually pursue a second PhD elsewhere and graduate with the highest mark possible. Still, he cannot let it go.
I don't want to accept that people are treated like this and that other people in the future, young scientists, have to run into similar situations like I did.
More than half of the young scientists we spoke to left academia citing abusive behavior or a toxic working environment. Most were afraid to report misconduct. And those who did say they were either discouraged from continuing, warned that it would affect their careers, or told to accept the conditions or leave. Our findings suggest a systemic failure of the accountability structures. The Max Planck Society denied discouraging people from reporting, saying anonymity does not preclude a report from being checked for validity. Great importance is attached to the confidential treatment of the identity of reporting persons.
Okay.
We traveled to Munich to meet with Thomas Sattelberger, a former lawmaker. He has demanded accountability from the Max Planck Society through several parliamentary requests. He calls for sweeping reforms.
Die brauchen ordentliche
They need
Aufsichtsgremien.
proper supervisory
Und
bodies,
diese
and these
Aufsichtsgremien,
supervisory
die müssen
bodies
auch
must
haften
also be
für
liable for
Fehlverhalten.
misconduct, as
Wie
is
das im
common
Grunde
in many other
vielen
sectors of
anderen
this
Feldern,
society.
In dieser Gesellschaft üblich ist.
The issue has even reached Germany's Federal Court of Audit. In 2024, they issued a damning report to the Ministry of Science, saying the Max Planck Society does not have a proper supervisory body. In fact, the president supervises his own actions.
Bei uns
In
wird
our
im
country,
Grunde
the
der
standard of science is being
Wissenschaftsstandard durch
increasingly
diese
compromised by
Skandale
these
mehr
scandals,
und mehr
and we
beeinträchtigt.
already have the
Und wir
major
haben ja
problem
heute
that
schon
really
das
top
große Problem,
scientists are
dass
leaving the
wirklich
country.
Spitzenwissenschaftler das Land verlassen.
Like Gabriel, who has found a new perspective in South Korea.
nowadays with more experience, I have worked with people who do science aggressively. And I don't dislike it. I think that an aggressive environment where people are fighting for their ideas, it can be actually quite productive. But he was not fighting the science, he was fighting the person. He was humiliating me.